let's create a conscious cash flow plan.
Conscious cash flow.
You know, we want our money flowing into the areas of our life that are important.
I believe a lot of employers have this model where you can say, I want 20% of my income to go to this, 20% of my income to go to a different bank account.
Mostly, like it depends on your employer.
I have, contributed extra, $100 every fortnight into my super. And my understanding is that because that is above what I contributed, I could also take that for a deposit. Is that correct?
Correct. If you're able to get a high growth, low fee fund and you're making tiny, seemingly insignificant additional contributions, you are going to be in such a better position than had you done nothing. And we need to make sure that you've got adequate insurance. I mean, you know that anything can happen to anyone. I don't think we need to sell to doctors about the risks that people can face around serious accident, illnesses and injuries. You see it every damn day. Protect yourself.
Hi everyone, this is Dr. B again, and welcome to another episode of the Investing for Doctors podcast. And today we have our previous guest, Jessica Brady. Welcome.
Back. You had me back.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, welcome back.
Thanks.
And last time we talked about a lot of things about mindset and learning to know yourself and how you go about getting started in the sort of investing space. Yeah. So today I think we'll dive into a bit deeper into nitty gritty about how you can help myself as a, giving general advice and teaching me about about finance.
Sure.
So before we start, for those who have not met you before, Jess,
Yes.
give me a quick spiel about who you are.
Sure. So as I mentioned in the previous episode, I've been in financial services for 18 years. So I'm still a licensed and qualified financial advisor. So importantly, everything that we talk about in today's episode is, of course, general advice only.
Yes.
But I did step out of doing one-on-one advice and creating online money programs and communities to try to help people to learn the basics of money so that they can build their own financial confidence and financial strategy. So, the analogy I think I used in our previous episode was, I want to teach people how to fish because money is something that we are all interacting with.
General life skill.
It's a general life skill.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we should all know more about it, and we should feel confident and excited by it. So that's what I do. I also host the Financially Fierce podcast. And I don't know, I go into companies and I teach organizations or staff within organizations about money. And I basically just want to make money education fun, more accessible, and more affordable. Beautiful.
All right. So today we're going to do a bit of role playing.
Are we?
Yes, we are. I am an intern.
So just remember that I don't know the medical world like you do.
Yes.
What does that mean? How old are you?
So, well, I could be anyone who is, say the youngest would be about 22, 23.
Okay.
Or, there's doctors who have gone and done something else in their prior life before they get into medical school. So I'll set the vignette. I'm a 25-year-old intern. So an intern is a first-year doctor.
Okay.
And I've just started getting my first paycheck.
Yep.
And I've been told, okay, I need to start thinking about money. Mm-hmm. Where do I start? Previously, I've got my first paycheck. Now it's in my bank account. I'm still living at home. Where do I go? What do I look at? Mm-hmm. What is the first step?
Well, statistically speaking, that first paycheck is probably not still in your bank account, especially if you live at home. You've got high disposable income. You're very, very likely to waste an enormous amount of money. So I think it obviously depends on the type of person you are. And honestly, around how much structure and discipline you know that you have within your personal world. You might be really good at that in your professional world. And I think to get to intern level, you've worked your bum off and you've studied really hard. And so, you are someone who can put your mind to something. And so
I choose to.
And that is the key point.
Yes.
If I choose to. And a lot of people do not choose to. And so I would say if you're 25, our motto is set you up for success. Mm-hmm. Like if you could go and talk to the older people that you work with and ask them if they had a time machine, if they could, sell their soul. Many people would say that they would want to go back and shake 25-year-old them to behave very differently with money because we are creatures of habit. And so if we are so young in our career, we haven't had the time to make all of those mistakes, but also bake them into our everyday behavioral kind of life or components of how we behave or what we spend money on. And so let's sort of nip that in the bud early. How do we set you up for success? So you're working really hard. Do interns work crazy hours?
Yeah, they do. Some of them. Yeah.
So I think one of the very simplest things that you can do is set one short, one medium, and one long-term financial goal.
Okay.
So short-term goal, next 12 months. Medium-term goal, next 5 years. So it's a good chunk of time to sort of think a little bit further afield. What is one goal, long-term, 5 years plus, that you would love to start working towards? Because naturally, particularly at that age, what we are likely to do is look at short-term goals only, particularly around January.
Yes.
You know, new year, new us. And we normally just run for the year ahead. And, you know, people who have, quote unquote, never been able to save become fantastic savers when, say, a holiday gets booked in.
Yes.
And then we rinse and repeat. And so rather than just focusing on short-term goals, what I like to stretch people to say is, yes, of course, we want a short-term goal that we can, you know, see some fast turnaround on, so you can have some success within 12 months. But what about the longer term? Because especially if you're looking to start investing, we aren't investing for 1 year turnaround times. That is not, I don't think.
All the way to retirement.
Absolutely.
Or even beyond that. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I don't know whether people, well, you're living at home, so like you might have financial capacity to work on more than one from each category. But for most people, they're making trade-offs so that they can have one short, one medium, and one long-term goal that they're working on simultaneously. That's budget dependent.
Okay. How we typically do clinical vignettes, right?
Go.
Is that we will then add more and more things to the piece.
Go.
And we'll see how you respond to it.
Okay, let's do this.
Let's do this. It's going to be new for you, but
'Cause I got lots of ideas still.
Most doctors will like, this is just like...
they're giggling?
The typical way we learn about cases in medicine. So give you a bit more background about myself. I have spent the last 8 years, studying, and I've always lived at home. Parents paid for everything. They cook my meals, wash my laundry. I'm a man child, right? And so even back in school, I had an allowance, right? Lucky me, because I'm Asian. And so now I'm out on my own. And my short-term goal is like, you know what? I think it's time to venture out from the family home and start to live my own life in a little way, much to the disagreement of my parents, because they wanted me close and they wanted me to be around until I got married. And that's perhaps something I'm looking forward to in the next 5 years, to settle down, find a partner.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
No.
I mean, in a general advice context, if you're living at home and they're doing your washing and they're feeding you, don't ever move out. Never move out. What are you doing? This is really common.
Yes.
Really common. And so one of the things that moving out of home, you get smacked with real life and reality pretty fast. And you realize that being an adult is very different to what the brochure of adulthood is like. It's mainly just bills and,
responsibilities.
Mundane things like, did I put the washing in the dryer, or like, did I order more dog food, or, boring stuff. But I think what we want to, practically talk about is you're probably, sky high HECS debts.
Yes. And
that, really scares people, particularly coupled with the idea that many of them want to buy property. And so a lot of questions that I've been getting, particularly because of inflation over the last few years, is, do I pay off additional money towards my HECS, or do I just sort of let that slow burn and, focus on a property deposit instead? And so that is something that needs to be kind of considered, especially if you're moving out and renting, which I presume in your vignette you are, because clearly our ability or our financial functions are going to be, there's not as much capacity for you to be able to put money towards any of those things.
If I'm spending money on rent.
If I'm spending money on rent, but not only rent, then you got to pay electricity, you got to pay internet, you got to pay, there's all these things that food. Okay. Remember, they're washing
That's
for you, they're feeding
now.
you.
Like I don't want to grow up.
Parents probably, maybe not yours, but many parents are like, please leave. And children are like, oh no, I'm never leaving. Have you seen the rental markets in Sydney where we're recording this? Like, I'm never leaving.
Okay, so now the next part, I've got a reality check because I went to a couple of open houses and everything was way too expensive.
Yes.
And I was just like, you know what, Mom and Dad, I still love you. I'm gonna stay at home.
Yes.
And what I want to do is like, I'll probably start saving up for my own place, because with the rent I'm paying, I probably can get my own place. I can get a little unit for myself and do that.
Yeah, great. And so then we want to figure out, is that a short-term goal? Is that a medium-term goal? Is that a long-term goal? For most people, it's probably more of the medium-term camp. And so then we want to figure out, okay, great. How do we set your cash flow up
so
that it's simple and it's easy and it's wildly effective? I hate the word budget. Budget to me sounds like diet. Diet is awful.
Yes.
Restrictive.
Yes.
And it feels burdensome.
Yes.
You know, you feel like, oh, I can't have the chocolate, or I'm doing the wrong thing. You know, it has all these really negative connotations. Whereas I talk about, let's create a conscious cash flow plan. We've got your goals. We want to be really
conscious cash flow. That is great terminology.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like I might be quite clever. Who knew? Because, you know, we want our money flowing into the areas of our life that are important. So if you want that house, we've got to be really conscious about how we're spending our money and where we're flowing our money to. And many people are not conscious at all. You know, they have absolutely no idea where their last paycheck went or how they survived on their prior income when they get a pay rise. And so it's like, great, get out of your own way. Do not set yourself up to fail. We want to set up a system and a structure so that it is simple. Because you're busy and you're working a lot of hours and you're coming home and you've had like heavy stuff to deal with. You're exhausted. So rather than thinking we're going to reconcile how many coffees you had that day, let's put that to the side. Unless you are a budget ninja and there are like less than 2%. In every like speaking event that I go to or corporate event that I go to, I always say to people, tell me if you resonate with this. You track every single cent. You're on top of everything. You know, there's a few hands. Most people are like, I couldn't think of anything worse.
Yeah.
I'm firmly in the I couldn't think of anything worse camp. So like, let's not pretend you're going to go home and do that. That's not.
Yeah.
If that's
I'm not a spreadsheet wizard.
If it doesn't light you up, don't make a system.
It doesn't spark joy.
It does not spark joy. Let's leave that to the side. So, you know, there are many different ways that you can do this, but the simplest is to separate and automate your banking. And, you know, the natural question for people in roles similar to what I'd imagine an intern role is, what do I do if I have variability of income? And it's like, great, let's figure out how much your life costs to live. Then we get a baseline number. We need to be earning this much to be able to pay our bills.
Yeah.
And so we create a system where every pay cycle automatically enough goes based on our baseline number. And so that might be your base salary or the base amount of expenses, depending when you need to keep afloat or not. And that can depend on seasonality and variability of income. And then what we need to figure out, and I tend to say to people, do this in a pie graph. Maybe it's because I'm visual, but anything beyond our baseline number or our base income, we need to have a pre-prepared plan of how that money's being divvied up.
Right.
Because anytime you have a little choice point or a little option to decide what we're doing, you are going to derail.
Yeah.
I mean, statistically speaking.
Yeah.
You know, oh, but I've got a friend's wedding coming up, or I've worked really hard this last fortnight, or I saw this thing on Instagram that I really want to buy. You'll find a way to muck it up. Rather than coming back to that goal and being like, right, any number beyond this that I get in my pay, I've decided 10% can be joy money. Listen, you're allowed to have fun.
Yeah.
Fine. But then I want to put 33% or whatever number it is to that house deposit. I want to put, you know, like whatever number it is, have that predetermined based on your goals that are exciting for you. And annoyingly, if you do have variability of income, there is manual intervention for that component. Everything else, get out of your own way.
Yeah.
Automate it.
And I believe a lot of employers have this model where you can you can say, I want 20% of my income to go to this, 20% of my income to go to a different bank account. So you can almost stream your income streams at the employer in healthcare.
Mostly, like it depends on your employer. My only thing with that is then if you want to tweak them.
Yeah, it's a pain.
It's a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
So
fair enough.
Especially like if you look at, so for example, what I say to people is have like a master income account. Frankly, do it however you want, but I've helped lots of people and this seems to be the one that works the most. And it's how I've run it for 10 years for me.
Okay.
This is the top of the waterfall. Remember we're flowing our money?
Yeah, waterfall, yeah.
So all our income, any type of income that we get goes in here, including overtime, whatever it is, all goes into our master income account. That's only got two purposes, to receive income and to deploy it to other areas.
Yes.
So then we need, what do we need? Well, we probably need a bills account. All of our regular and fixed expenses come from there. If they're regular and fixed with a couple of variations, we can have a pretty good idea.
Yeah, almost like a transaction account where.
But then like throw the card away. You don't need the card.
Yeah.
Or keep it somewhere safe. But like that is just for bills. And we bank up funds for, I don't know, annual rego, annual insurance bills, like whatever comes at an annual basis. We're trying to allocate money every pay cycle so that when that bill occurs, it's already taken care of. I would also encourage particularly young people to bake in an inflation buffer. So I do that in my greenhouse program. I think we've got an inflation buffer of 4%. So like grab the end number, add 4%. And every year based on, you know, what's going on in the world, think about increasing it by at least inflation. That bills account, you don't need to worry about. You've set up an automation. You never need to worry about a bill again. I don't know. That feels nice to me.
Yeah, that does feel nice.
Yeah. And then, we can have whatever accounts you want. Whether you want an account, you should have an emergency savings account at an individual level.
Yep.
No one else should be able to touch that. Generally 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. If you're a new intern, it might take you a little bit of time to be able to get to that 3 to 6 months, but you can get there. So I would have that really separated. You might want a holiday account. Most people want to go on a holiday, especially if you're young and you haven't done a huge amount of travel yet. You've worked your butt off. I'd say, cool, let's not pretend you never want to go on a holiday. Even if people don't have aspirations to do big international holidays, cool, what about small domestic things? Sometimes people want to have gift accounts. This is where it can get nuanced and individual. I've had lots of people who want, an account for going out, specifically for going out, because that's really aligned to their values and being able to hang out with their friends or eat yummy food or whatever. Or it might be that they really like fashion, and so they want an account that, means that they can buy things, without any level of fear that they're going to muck everything else up.
Yep.
And then we want savings-based goals accounts for short-term goals, not medium or long-term. You'd normally think about different ways to, deploy your money. And then my secret hack is have a weekly spend account.
A weekly spend account.
It gets fed from our master top of the waterfall account every week. You pick the day that works for you. I am pro Wednesday because, and maybe with interns with shift work, maybe this is not going to be the case, but if you then blow it because you have a big weekend,
yes,
it's not too hard to survive to Wednesday. I had a lot of clients make Friday their account, their payday.
Yeah.
That's a long time to wait if you have a busy weekend to get to Friday.
Okay.
And by being able to give yourself that short, sharp cycle, you have freedom within boundaries. I don't care how many coffees you had yesterday. I couldn't care less. We've allocated a certain amount of money for your budget from your overall master plan. We have psychological safety because we know what our goals are and we're deploying money to lots of the other things. All I need to do is make sure I do not spend beyond the money in that that weekly spend account.
And whatever is left, I can splurge on next week.
Splurge on next week. And that's, there often is seasonality. You go through really busy periods, spendy seasons, bank money season. Up. What was it?
Wedding seasons.
Wedding seasons. And you'll go through, all your friends will start having children and getting married and all those things. And so bank it up for when there's, a busy period of your life and spend without fear.
So how many bank accounts is that now?
It depends.
Yeah.
It depends on you. And obviously
what's the minimum? You got the master account. You got
I'd say 4 or
savings
5.
account. You got a splurge, and you got a bills account.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And do you would you say have it all within the same bank, different banks, or how does that?
Depends on you. If you are likely to see your savings increase, be it for, your home deposit or your emergency savings, and that is the signal for you to spend, every time you open your app and you see that number, put it with a different bank.
Yeah. Okay.
If you're quite controlled and you actually get excited by watching the money grow and you can get that sort of positive reinforcement of, hey, I'm doing it, this is great, then having it all in one is no problem. Obviously, you don't want to be charged bank account fees every month for every account, so you need to look into that.
Yeah.
And look, if you've got a mortgage, many mortgage providers now offer multiple offset accounts.
Yeah, and then there's plenty of bank accounts where it's fee-free anyway.
Yeah, and so just name them correctly so you know which accounts for what. The amount of people who spend their time on financial admin that is related to moving money around blows my mind. And what I say to people is stop wasting your time moving money from one account to another and use that time to learn how to grow your money. That is a far better use of your time. Set it up once, get out of your own way.
So it comes to then, my personal circumstance. I'm a man-child, I'm living at home, and my parents are paying for nearly most of my living expenses, really, apart from the, when I go out on the weekends and that sort of stuff or have lunches. I probably should still build up that buffer, shouldn't I?
Totally.
Yeah.
And people get lulled into a false sense of reality in that situation and they think they can afford a whole heap of things that actually they can't. The classic one is a car, a fancy car.
Oh, yeah.
Because what they say is, I live at home. I don't pay any rent. Mum and dad feed me. I got all this disposable income. I can afford the fancy car. And it's like, cool. Let's panel beat this. Let's say you did go out and rent again. Let's do the numbers. Let's say you got that mortgage. Yeah. Let's do the numbers. And very quickly you realize this is a false economy, my friend.
Yeah.
You can't afford this very fancy car. Yeah. No, you're not living in real life. And so you can't tell yourself or justify to yourself these enormous purchases that pull you back financially. So we get often people who get this false sense of reality, and they make a lot of dumb financial decisions with a lot of disposable income, and they get themselves into holes. You know the amount of people that live at home that end up in pretty bad personal debt positions?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's wild. Because they haven't created good habits. They haven't set themselves up for success. So what I would say is 3 to 6 months worth of bare bone expenses. And look, if you are, we've joked about it, but genuinely, if you are thinking about moving out of home, I would make that 3 to 6 months worth of expenses based off, an estimate of rent included or mortgage included, depending on where you're at in that journey. But then we've also got to think about things like, okay, where is my super? How many super funds do I have? I'm 25. Am I in a balanced fund? And if so, why am I in a balanced fund? And how much growth has that got?
Yeah, I think that's so this is my first job. So I think in New South Wales, I just go with one of the industry funds they've allocated me to.
Cool.
And I think it's depending on my age, so I should be in a high risk portfolio.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you're in a life stages account.
Yes, in a life stages account. Yeah.
Great. And so the idea of that is it is meant to, as you age, change the underlying asset allocation to match what, generally someone in that age band would think is an appropriate level of risk. But what do you think?
I'm a YOLO person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's because you're a man and you're young, statistically speaking. If I asked a female young doctor, they'd probably go, I'm a bit worried. It's fascinating. I've had to coach so many young women, smart young women, to take more risk with things like superannuation. And look, superannuation is really annoying because we have labels that do not necessarily match what the underlying asset allocation is. So you can be in a balanced fund that is not balanced. It's very growth weighted. So we can't just look at a couple of labels and then decide that that's the right thing for us.
Look at the underlying mixture and asset allocation. So I remember when I had that very early in the piece, I just went for my own custom allocation. I didn't use a life stage one, and I just
They probably didn't have them. Yeah, they wouldn't have had life stages.
No, back then it was, I think it was just, I can't remember what it was called then, but like I've allocated a percentage to Australian equities and I allocated a percentage to international equities because there weren't that many options of individual things, and I just left it. Yeah.
And like you can do that. You can do DOI. You can find pre-mixed options. I think the point to make is that generally the rule of thumb is the shorter the amount of time you've got from an investment time horizon perspective, the less risk you can take.
Yeah.
Because you want to achieve the goal quickly. We've got to be careful with it. But simultaneously, the longer we've got until we want to achieve that goal or until we reach that target, a la retirement age, we've got far more time to ride out investment market volatility.
Absolutely.
Therefore, we can handle more risk.
So as a 25-year-old, realistically, I should just be going the highest risk profile. Yeah.
As long as you are not going to be the type of person who sees investment markets go down in the news and is
panic.
likely to panic and sell. So we've got to do this human overlay of like making sure that we've created what I call a sleep at night plan. I need to be able to sleep at night with the level of risk I've taken in my investment portfolio, and I'm not laying awake panicking that I've overexposed myself in a market and therefore I'm going to rip it out at the worst possible time. But generally speaking, you're 25. You've got decades and decades and decades. You're actually more risk to yourself by putting yourself in a lower growth portfolio because you're not going to have enough in retirement, potentially.
Love it.
That's the risk.
Yeah.
So the other thing to think about is, remember, you've just got your first paycheck. You're not used to having this amount of money. Your probs won't miss a little bit of cash being squirreled away into super for long-term you as well. So because we're not used to this level of income yet, and I say to people, obviously it's dependent on your goal and you need to think about the fact that superannuation is a long-term investment vehicle. So we can't rip it out tomorrow. There's a few exceptions, but broadly, what if you put $20 every pay cycle as additional contributions to super? Would you miss it?
Nah, not really.
Yeah.
I won't even notice it.
If you put 50, just do whatever you can start with that is going to be sustainable. And every time you get a pay increase, think about whether you should increase that. Of course, when you get to an income band, though, that means you're close to the caps.
Yeah.
That's what you need to obviously factor in and look at whether you can sort of back contribute for years where you didn't hit your caps.
Yes.
But I'm assuming that you're under the cap now, which is $30,000 per year.
I had zero in my super, and now I'm putting something in.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And so, I would always be able to tell clients of mine who I used to give one-on-one advice to who had made additional contributions, even $5 a week, tiny amounts. because of the cumulative and compounding impact. So if you're able to get, a high growth, low fee fund and you're making tiny, seemingly insignificant additional contributions, you are going to be in such a better position than had you done nothing. The other thing that we need to do is protect the goose that is laying these golden eggs, a la our income. And we need to make sure that you've got adequate insurance.
Absolutely.
I mean, that anything can happen to anyone. I don't think we need to sell to doctors about the risks that, people can face around serious accident, illnesses and injuries.
We see that every day.
You see it every damn day. Protect yourself.
Okay. So now I've got some income protection, and I felt like, well, at this stage, I've got no liability. So, I'm not really going to bother with life insurance for now. I'll think about it when I get married or have kids or, actually buy my own property. And time has flown by, and now I'm 28.
So old.
Yeah, I know. It's go by. I think I'm ready to actually getting into the property market now. I've got a bit of a saving. And before we get there, there's a couple of incentives that the government has put out for people to contribute money into their superannuation, isn't there, to assist with that saving process?
The First Home Super Saver Scheme.
Yes.
Who in the marketing department of the government has made up that name? I do not know.
FHSS. There's like 3 S's or something.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, I've taken your advice. I have, contributed extra, $100 every fortnight into my super. And my understanding is that because that is above what I contributed, I could also take that now out for a deposit. Is that correct?
Correct. There are limits and caps around how much you can contribute that you can pull out. I think it's now changed to I want to say 50,000, but that might be for a couple.
It's something. There's a particular number.
They change all the time.
It's online. Yeah.
You must live in the property though. So within the 6 months of the first 12 months. So that's something to consider, because if you were buying your first property and decided, actually, for whatever reason, I'm going to make it an investment property, or I got a placement in a different area to where I just bought, and you've used the First Home Super Saver Scheme, you might get into some trouble. Yep. So do make sure you understand all of the rules and regulations. But yes, that is absolutely an option to you, on top of all of the other state and territory first home grants and schemes and stamp duty exemptions
stamp duty
and things.
Waivers and all that sort of stuff.
And they all vary, so you need to have a look at that.
Yes.
I'm stuck on one thing. Can we go back?
Yes.
You don't need life insurance. Sure. You got no debts and dependents. You got income protection. Fantastic. You need to consider total and permanent disability and trauma cover and potentially needle stick injury cover. Okay, we can move right along. It was burning a hole in my brain.
Yes.
Because people think like, income protection or life insurance. And I'm like, no, especially as a doctor. Like, do you know about own occupation TPD? Do you know the TPD in your super is definitely very much likely to be any occupation?
I'm catching up now. So
anyway.
So I'm 28 now, and I think about, what happens if I'm a cripple, because I've seen a couple of people.
Oh, sorry, I'm not good at, we don't do these role plays. Yeah. So I'm mucking this up. Let's keep going. So yes, you could pull out additional funds that you've contributed to use for that property.
Yes.
But I guess the question is like, what is the property for? Are you going to live in it? Are you going to buy it as an
investment?
investment?
Live in it at least for a year. Yeah.
Great. How you look at buying an asset like property really varies depending on whether you're going to live in it or buy it as an investment property. They're very different.
Well, I guess the view is that, I'm trying to get on a very competitive training scheme, and that training scheme will send me all around the country. So, but at least for the next year, maybe 2 years, I'll be living in this one, and with the view that I may not be living in this for a very long time if I get on and have to be sent somewhere else. And so it really serves as a dual purpose kind of investment slash owner occupied. Yeah.
Which is a tough one to get right. And look, most people who buy their first property, it's a stepping stone property.
Yes.
And for most people who are living in capital cities, even if you're on a good income, we're looking at apartments for most people.
Yeah, just say it's an apartment.
Then houses.
Yeah, it's an apartment in a nice blue chip area near a hospital, near a university.
Great.
Yeah.
And so whilst we don't expect as much growth from an apartment as we do a house, we've got lots of other, opportunities. We're building wealth because we hope that the property will increase in value, but also we're reducing the debt if we're on principal and interest payments. The thing that I wanted to talk about is, the deposit hurdle. And I would strongly suggest to go and get a good mortgage broker in your corner, because there are lots of things, particularly as a doctor, that you may not need to factor in that many other occupations do need to, and they have hurdles, or you might have your parents love you by the sounds of it. They might be more than happy to go guarantor.
Yeah.
I don't think you have to pay LMI anyway.
No, we don't have to pay LMI anyway.
Oh,
so
you got it so easy.
We get it good sometimes, and we forget how good we get
great.
it. And so yeah, you know, I'm looking at a $600,000 apartment.
Yep.
Because I've listened to you, I've got at least a 10% deposit, and I hopefully we're gonna get the waiver on the stamp duty just for instance.
Well, you get a waiver on the stamp duty, and you won't pay lender's mortgage insurance because you're a doctor.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So I just have to have my deposit, and then I have to just find a place, right? And it's about what do I need to think about as I'm going through that process? You said it's difficult to select a place because of the dual purpose of the property I'm buying. Like, in your mind, what are you thinking as, you know, if you were to advise someone on that?
Yeah, look, firstly, in full transparency, like any property that I've purchased myself, I've used a buyer's agent.
Yeah.
And that is for a variety of reasons, but also I don't have time to wade through it all. And so maybe think about that if you're a busy doctor and you can't make those annoying Saturday mornings or whenever
I'm working on Saturday morning.
Yeah. So look, what am I looking for? Personally, I'll answer it personally because I'm not going to pretend that I'm a property expert. I've never bought an apartment, but if I was looking for an apartment, let's say I'm going back in time, 28-year-old me, looking for my first apartment, I would be looking at a blue chip area. I'd be looking at facilities and amenities. I'd want to make sure I understood, particularly in a capital city, you know, I heard some horror stories in Sydney where people were buying and not doing their due diligence properly and didn't realise that they're about to have like a tunnel or a freeway or something being built. You know, you want to check all of that, get a good team around you to make sure that you're checking all of that stuff. For me, I'd go for more of a boutique block.
Like a smaller block?
A smaller block,
yes.
I wouldn't want to go for a high rise for a number of different reasons. You know, from a wealth perspective, if you've got hundreds of the same floor plan, it is A, likely that one's sold very recently, and B, it's likely to have a similar floor plan, which means your price is going to be very, you know, wedded to what a property in that complex has recently sold for. But there's also just a lot more complications in terms of the strata, having a voice on the strata committee. I'd want to be on the strata committee if I was an owner. As painful as they sound like they can be, you want to have some say in how that money is being deployed and making sure that that property is being maintained correctly. So we don't want to buy an asset where a lot of the apartments are owned by investors and they're not investing or saying yes at the AGM of the strata meeting to do the work to maintain
the necessary upkeep.
Because what happens? Well, then they let it languish and then it becomes a huge problem. And now you're looking at the Capital Works Fund being empty and having, you know, special levies.
Yes.
So I would go for a smaller block. I'd want to have a look at the strata reports and I'd want to get really nosy and not only just look at the apartment, I'd want to look around, you know, the complex, and I'd want to get, you know, talking to neighbours and, you know, understand, are there special levies? If it's been built recently, are there defects? If I'm buying in an area that has had phenomenal growth and there's a lot of development, is my bank actually going to lend to me? Or do they have a blackout exclusion zone because they've lent too much in that area? You know, you don't want to find that out. God forbid you find that out after you go to an auction, like you've already, depending on the state. But, you know, people make these mistakes. Then I'd be looking, for me personally, I'd be looking at floor plan.
Yep.
I'd be looking at lighting. If you're driving to a hospital and you don't have a car spot,
that's a deal breaker.
I would imagine that is a deal breaker.
Yeah. And there's I know in New South Wales at least there's certain suburbs where the DA planning, if you're a 1-bedroom apartment, you're not allowed to have a car slot.
Yeah, I heard this the other day from a property expert. About 10 years ago, I think she said, the architects obviously had like some sort of hiatus from doing their job properly, and they were building second bedrooms that had like glass bricks, or like doors that had like opaque glass through it instead of having a window.
Oh, yeah.
So the second bedroom doesn't technically have a window. Yeah. Now, I didn't know this, and she's in Victoria, but I would imagine that this is across the board.
Yeah.
The bank will not value that as a 2-bedroom apartment.
Yes.
It's a 1-bedroom apartment. And so what it's worth versus what you might have said yes to buying it for at the auction day, or, you know, you've said yes and you've gone in to negotiate with a real estate agent only for the bank to come in and go, no, we are not, that is not the valuation because that is not a second bedroom.
Oh, wow.
That is a dark and dingy big storage room.
Like office.
Office that no one wants to work from because it feels like a jail.
Yeah.
And so, again, this is why buyer's agents are worth their weight in gold. I've always used them. I've always told clients to use them. Get a good one. Get one that is independent and knows what they're doing and doesn't, have the certificate that they got on the weekend before last because they only have to do a 2-day course. It's a bit of a cowboy industry. So just be really careful and use trusted partners for that. But yeah, I'd look for light. I'd look for a good floor plan. I'd look for good storage. For me personally, especially because you're trying to get your cake and eat it too, I would be looking for something that I could do up. Because we get really emotional when we go into property. We like to think we're these very pragmatic, logical people. And then suddenly we're like swept into this idea of, I could see myself living here, or, I hate the carpet, or that, those curtains are awful. Who cares? Take them off. Pull the curtain. Don't not buy a property because you don't like the paint on the wall or the carpet.
There's things that can be changed. Cosmetic things can be changed.
And you can get upswing on that as well.
Yeah.
Don't overcapitalize. That would be another thing, especially at the moment. Building is expensive. And, we've seen a lot of builders do dodgy work. So I'd be really careful buying anything that's pretty new.
Or off the plan right now.
Yeah. Like just pick someone who's got a really good track record and has good insurances, and it gets complicated. So that's what I would be looking for. I'm someone who walks a lot, so I want livability. And I think renters want livability. So walkability and high livability sort of. I would want to be able to walk to, God forbid, get coffee or like go and, do things, restaurants. I have a dog. I want to be close to a dog park.
Yes.
So even if none of these things are relevant for you and you don't necessarily need them, if it is something where you're going to be thinking, okay, cool, I will likely move out but retain it as an investment property, then think about, okay, well, what's going to make this really attractive? What's the transport situation? If you're buying a bigger place, are there schools nearby? I just bought an investment property a little while ago. It's got 3 hospitals within walking distance. And I was like, great. They're actually building a whole big research centre near it as well. And I was like, fantastic. There are always going to be people in the healthcare profession.
I think I know where that is.
Yeah, you probably all do know where this is. They're building transport there as well. So it's got good infrastructure.
Yes.
There's, it's got a flight path because of the hospital, which means that I can't, I'm not going to wake up tomorrow and have, I don't live in there, but you know what I mean? There's not going to be a huge skyscraper developed across the road. So, I think creating a must-have list and a nice-to-have list. And for me, a must-have list is I will not buy a property that does not have this thing.
Yeah, so it's almost like an exclusion criteria.
Yes, and that I would have more on my nice-to-have list than my must-have list.
Yes.
And so sit down and figure that out. And, of course, if you're buying with someone, get alignment on what's on the must-have, what's on the nice-to-have. And I guess, you can't change the location. Someone, again, a property expert that said this to me, you can never change the location of a property.
Yep.
You can change the features.
Yeah.
So if people, especially with your first property, just getting in is the hardest bit.
Yeah.
And so people are often saying to me, do I pick location or do I pick features? And obviously no one wants to live in an awful place. There has to be livability overlaid into that. Unless you are someone who's really prepared to hold for a long time because you've got conviction that there's going to be good, urban sprawl and that the growth of that area is going to come up, then most people are picking based on location first. Because often we can't wiggle on the budget, but we can wiggle on the type of apartment we get and where we actually buy the apartment.
Oh, that's great. Like a framework for how to think about how to get into
Gifted to me by Emily Wallace, who's a wonderful buyer's agent down in Victoria. She gave me that little triangle and it's really helped me think about that.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, I guess the last thing we have to touch on is like, how do I set myself up for the future? Now that I've got this property, I'm putting some money into offset, or do I say, I got some friends are putting money into the stock market, or do I go and say, I can put it in my super, right? So what are the thoughts in there as you come with that problem?
Well, you're already looking after yourself because you've been, as far as I'm aware, you've been salary sacrificing for 3 years nonstop.
$100 a fortnight, yep.
And so if you've chosen property as that main priority, I'm going to say that was your medium-term goal. That was the medium one. And look, it is very likely when you're starting out that you may not be able to do all goals from each time horizon. So typically in that instance, it might just be, okay, I went on a holiday as part of my 1 year goal and I saved for my home deposit. But if we've now gotten to a stage where we're like, okay, great, I've got my more financial capacity, or maybe property wasn't the priority, we can start to think about, okay, well, what else could I be doing with my money?
Exactly.
And what I say to people is, when you buy a property, do not get so, up to your eyeballs in debt that there is no additional financial, there's no money left.
Yeah.
To do other stuff.
Yeah. Well, I've got my 3 to 6 months sitting there.
Yeah, no, that's our emergency savings.
Yes.
We don't invest that.
Yeah.
That's for an emergency.
Can I put that in my offset?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah. Of course. And I mean, if you've got an owner-occupied offset, in fact, if you've got any offset, yes. Because that is directly reducing the amount of interest that you pay. If it's an investment property, sure, you might be losing some tax deductibility. But ultimately, if the goal of that investment property is to generate passive income, then at some point we have to pay off the debt.
Pay off the debt. Yeah.
We get so enamored by tax deductions. It's interesting. We want to diversify. But when we buy our first property, often we've gone all in with everything we've got and then some, and we are pedaling hard to be able to, Yes. And, thoughts and prayers to the people who bought up to their eyeballs at the old interest rates that we had and are now feeling very pinched.
Yeah, paying 3 times.
Yeah. I mean, my mortgage has doubled. Like but we should have all expected that. And that's a good point. Like, make sure as you're doing these assessments that you're always thinking, okay, cool. If interest rates did increase by a couple of %, can I handle it? Just to give yourself that psychological safety. But even when you've got the property, now it's time to diversify. We can't have all of our wealth eggs in one basket. And if we're living in it, there's different trains of thought. Like, it is an asset, but it's not really an asset because it's our home.
Yeah.
So we've got to think about that slightly differently. And so we might want to, start looking at opening an investment portfolio, normally for time poor people who want passive income. So the ability to have access to cash pre-retirement, because remember, we're salary sacrificing for the long term. Then normally they're looking at what is the right investment vehicle for me. For many young people who want cost-effective, diversified investment strategies, they're looking at ETFs.
Yes.
As like the core component. And they might have satellite investments later on as they learn more, as they get more interest in it. They may never. And so I would always be looking for low cost, well-credentialed fund that's been around for a long time. We can see what the performance of that is. We get under the hood to look at, well, what are we actually investing in? Does that marry up with my risk profile and my goal? And how do I automate this as part of my cash flow plan? Because we want a dollar cost average. We're not trying to pick the right day, in the right week, in the right month. Keep it simple. If we invest periodically, maybe not every pay cycle if you're being paid really frequently, and again, look at what those minimum sort of transaction or trade fees are in your investment portfolio. Maybe it's once a month.
Yeah.
And we just set it up and it moves, and we have it so that any dividends or distributions that we receive are automatically reinvested. We get out of our own way. You're busy. You don't want to have to manually remember to reinvest any money or to go into your paycheck. And again, with variability of income, come back to that pie graph. You might be like, okay, well, I've promised myself that 30% on top of my base number goes into this investment portfolio. Sure, there might be some manual intervention there. But as much as we can, as long as we've got a really robust goal framework that we're working towards, a really robust cash flow plan, itemize everything, we set up systems and structures so that we build wealth while we're sleeping. That's all.
That's it.
No, there's obviously a lot more to do.
Yeah, this is just the very start. I'm only 3rd year out.
But I hope that gives people some idea. What I talk to people about is I want you to build your wealth and I want you to protect your wealth.
Yes.
Simultaneously. So we're always thinking about, where am I trying to go? How do I build and how do I protect? So estate planning and getting all, we've got to be thinking, I say to people, let's hope for the best and prepare for the worst.
Yep.
And that is how we need to set our money up. And we just want to create consistency. We want good habits. We want to learn to say how to say no to ourselves. And we want to learn how to say no to other people. No, I'm not coming to your expensive wedding that's in Italy that's going to cost me X amount of money when I've just bought a house. Or no, Jess, I don't need to buy that thing that Instagram keeps spewing at me. I don't need it. So we have to also create really good disciplined behavior. And then every time I get a pay rise or a promotion, I almost need to think of it like, what pay rise? What promotion? There's no more money. I just need to recalibrate my cash flow plan and expedite the growth of my wealth and still have fun. Yeah,
that's very important because
You can have
got
fun.
that discretionary little
Correct.
fund. Yeah. So that sounds like a very good initial plan for anyone starting out. You know, the take home is get your cash flow right.
Yep.
What was that term?
Conscious cash flow
Conscious
plan.
cash flow plan. Yeah. And then think about, you know, saving for a property if that's what you want to do, or automate investing into equity market, and then protect your wealth and your asset, which is yourself.
And anchor everything around a goal.
Yes.
Anchor everything around a goal, because investing and moving money into an investment account, especially if it doesn't excite you, that's like, whatever. Whereas like, I want to do this so that I can, I don't know, go on a sabbatical every 5 years for 12 months. And I want to eat pasta for 12 months in Italy. And then I want to go to Africa for 12 months the next 5 years. You know, figure out what that's going to give you that you're really aligned to, because then that's not boring investment account anymore.
Yeah.
That is your freedom fund, my friend. And that is going to excite you a lot more than a boring
Just numbers ticking up.
statement. Exactly right.
Well,
You're in good stead. You're going to be fine.
I had my parents.
Thank God for your parents.
Thank God for my parents paying the rent. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, as you can tell, some of that was modeled off myself.
That was not your life. That's not what you had.
No, with some minor alterations. No, it wasn't that.
We couldn't have had more different. My parents were like, great, you're 18, you're an adult. You either pay rent or leave. And I was like, how much am I being charged in rent? And they told me, and I was like, it's literally the same if I rent. So I moved out at 18, never moved home.
Well, my parents don't live in Australia, so I couldn't stay at home. But they still pay for a lot of things. So it's good to have Asian parents. The trade-offs.
The generational wealth divide. But in all seriousness, I think any of the things that we've talked about today are applicable for everyone, irrespective of their background, culture, how much their parents have or haven't helped them. Like there's fundamentals and foundational things that people can get right that are not hard. They just require time and effort.
Yeah, and taking the first step. I think that's the most important thing. So for all the listeners out there, if you were to do anything after listening to this, hopefully you get some inspiration and make that first step.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. The information and opinions shared are not intended as personal financial advice. The content presented should not be relied upon for making financial, investment, or other decisions. Listeners are strongly encouraged to seek the advice of qualified financial or legal professionals before making any financial decisions. While we aim to provide valuable and accurate information, we make no guarantees regarding the completeness or accuracy of the content. Any reliance on the information provided is done at your own risk.